While some leaders are busy feeling things out and casually talking about land swaps, Ukraine is busy changing the game, both on the battlefield and in orbit. In this episode, a fuel crisis looms in Russia after another round of Ukrainian drone strikes. Zelenskyy meets Trump online in Berlin. On the front line, Russia's big push in Donetsk hits a wall, and it's the Ukrainian one. And Ukraine just became the first country in Europe to roll out Starlink Direct-to-Cell. More details on this are coming up. This is the case. Ukraine's defense forces continue adjusting Russia's energy map. This time, a direct hit struck at the Unecha oil pumping station in the Bryansk region, a key hub on the Druzhba pipeline. After the strike came the usual fire and smoke over the facility that just happened to pump 60 million tons of crude oil a year for the Russian military, some regions within Russia, and for export. While Bryansk is burning, Saratov stopped burning and just stopped. The local oil refinery decided to take a break after a visit from Ukrainian drones. Several key refineries also have come under attack this August. The outcome predictable. Gasoline prices in Russia are rising fast and their logistics are falling apart. Once again, their so-called gestures of will come with a price. More on this in the report.
The Russian government is preparing an urgent meeting with the representatives of the largest oil companies due to the crisis in the fuel market. Russian media reported, citing sources. They will discuss how to prevent retail prices for gasoline from rising above the inflation rate. Since the beginning of the year, AI-92 gasoline has risen in price by a third in the federation and AI-95 by almost a half. The meeting, with the participation of Deputy Prime Minister Novak, is scheduled for August 14th.
According to Rosstat, for the second week in a row, the growth in the cost of gasoline at gas stations exceeds the overall inflation rate. In addition, the meeting participants will discuss the operation of the gasoline export ban mechanism and make proposals for its further application. From a report in Russian media,
the jump in gasoline prices is due to a decline in fuel production, and its cause is drone strikes on oil refineries in the aggressor country, such as the attack of Ukrainian drones on the Saratov oil refinery on the night of August 10th. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed the hits on the facility.
As a result of the UAV's impact on the territory of the enterprise, explosions and a fire were recorded. The Saratov oil refinery is one of the key facilities of the fuel infrastructure of the Russian Federation, involved in providing the occupation forces with oil products. Its annual refining capacity is 7 million tons of oil. From the message of the General Staff of the AFU on Facebook.
According to Bloomberg, after the UAV attack, the Saratov oil refinery stopped accepting oil. Its long-term shutdown could have a significant impact on domestic gasoline supplies, experts believe. Earlier, the General Staff of the AFU confirmed the hits of the Afipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. Its annual processing volume is slightly less than that of the Saratov oil refinery, more than 6 million tons. In August, the Ryazan and Novokuybyshevsk oil refineries also suffered from attacks by UAVs of the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
When the first strikes began, they were stretching a net, meaning they were putting some machine guns around the refinery, and it turns out that none of this works. That is, all these billion-dollar investments by oil giants in the security of oil refineries turned out to be a dud. This is not some hangar or even a workshop. This is a huge territory, like a city, the territory of an oil refinery. You can't cover a city with a net. Therefore, there is only one option. Either resign yourself and tolerate the rise in prices, the gasoline shortage, or solve the problem. Well, somehow ending this whole story with aggression.
On August 10th, drones also attacked an oil refinery in Ukhta, almost 2,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The Kremlin understands that it cannot protect its strategic facilities throughout Russia, which is why it is talking about a possible so-called air truce. Analysts say the Belarusian dictator voiced this proposal, but the idea belongs to Putin.
Putin needs to make some step, propose some decision, or be left without gasoline, without fuel, and fuel is the lifeblood of the economy. Accordingly, he has a choice to either move some incredible efforts of force to protect the refineries, remove the air defense from the front, or, I don't know, throw billions of rubles into some new technologies. Surely it was Putin's idea, and not Lukashenko's about the air truce, because for Putin this is the most terrible thing.
While gasoline is becoming more expensive in Russia, oil prices are falling on world markets. Reuters reported a 4% drop in world fuel prices when OPEC plus countries are increasing production. The Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine reported that the Kremlin is preparing for the oil price to fall to $40 per barrel, which is almost $30 less than planned in the aggressor country's budget for 2025. Reported by Andriy Dmitrenko, Pavlo Shtelmach, UETV News.
Today, European leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy will hold online talks with US President Donald Trump, hoping to convince him to respect Kyiv's interests when he discusses the war with Russian dictator Putin in Alaska on Friday. Zelenskyy arrived in Berlin to participate in an afternoon video conference with host Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who also invited French, British and other European leaders, as well as EU and NATO leaders, to participate in the talks. The second round of the same conference call features a conversation with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. Currently, the meeting between Trump and Putin on Friday is planned to take place without Zelenskyy. This has fueled fears Kyiv may have been forced into painful concessions, including over land. EU leaders stressed on Tuesday the inherent right of Ukraine to choose its own destiny, adding that international borders must not be changed by force. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, Zelenskyy ruled out the possibility of withdrawing troops from the Donbas, which Moscow claims. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron and Merz also intend to hold a round of talks with the so-called Coalition of the Willing, which supports the Ukrainian army. This is really a feel-out meeting a little bit, Trump said at the White House, but he also added that eventually there will be some swapping, there will be some changes in land. Well, those changes in land are happening right now as the world watches and talks about them.
We see that the Russian army is not preparing to end the war. On the contrary, they are making movements that indicate preparations for new offensive operations. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, during a daily address.
Merz's office also commented that the whole idea behind the conference call is to discuss preparation of possible peace negotiations and related issues of territorial claims and security and further options to exert pressure on Russia. And I'm sure with a couple of more options like spiderweb operation, and Russia will be way more keen on to negotiate.
President Trump knows that if the United States works for peace in Ukraine, defends Ukrainian and European interests, then he can count on our full support. We talked about important events. We also made it clear that Ukraine should be at the negotiation table if there is a next meeting. We want the right order. That means negotiations, and that should be at the very beginning. Important elements could be a framework agreement, which will come later. Third, Ukraine is ready to negotiate on territorial issues, but the starting point is the contact line. I told the President of the United States of America and all our European colleagues that Putin is bluffing. He is trying to put pressure on us before the meeting in Alaska, on all directions of the Ukrainian front. Russia is trying to portray that it is capable of occupying all of Ukraine. Of course, this is their desire. Putin is also bluffing as if sanctions are not important to him and that they are not working. In fact, sanctions are very helpful and are hitting the Russian military economy. Yes, it is true, Russia has several times more weapons, in particular 3 times more artillery and the like. But Russia also has 3 times more losses, and this is a fact.
The fighting continues in areas that are now and will likely remain central to negotiations. Russian forces have not established full control over these territories. Now an update on the situation in the Donetsk direction.
Ukrainian and Russian sources characterize the Russian forces operating east and northeast of Dobropillya as limited sabotage and reconnaissance groups that are hiding in basements, windbreaks and forests in the area. Russian forces have been using tactics that rely on small fire teams that infiltrate the Ukrainian near rear by finding weak points in Ukrainian defenses, at which point the fire teams wait for more forces to accumulate and then attack to try to gain a foothold and consolidate. From the Institute for the Study of War report.
This time, the enemies tried to take advantage of a gap between Ukrainian units, attempting a breakthrough towards several settlements and aiming to cut off the strategically important Dobropillya-Kramatorsk highway. The assault began with heavy shelling. On the map, it looked like a risky but potentially decisive maneuver, but in reality, it appeared more like a rushed attempt to make gains before the Ukrainian command could respond. And Ukrainian forces, state-organized, experienced units like Azov and Da Vinci Wolves were already getting ready to strike back from the rear. The front line held, and while the situation was tense, it stayed under control. Social media was full of panic and rumors, but things didn't go the way the Kremlin wanted. Coordination were re-established, reserves were deployed, and the situation has now shifted. Drone footage not only shows the enemy heavy losses, but also sends a message. The attempted breakthrough has ended in a deadlock. The Dobropillya-Kramatorsk highway remains under Ukrainian control. Russian forces are now trapped in localized zone, and it is they who risk being cut off. Another Ukrainian breakthrough. For the first time in Europe, the country is introducing Starlink Direct-to-Cell satellite internet, which will work in regular 4G smartphones. The first successful test took place in the forests of Zhytomyr region, where there is no mobile coverage. Data speeds reach about 3 Mbps for downloads and 0.5 Mbps for uploads, similar to regular 3G. Starting in autumn 2025, the service will be available to all Ukrainian users with mobile satellite internet and voice calls planned for 2026. No special antennas or equipment are needed, just a smartphone with a SIM or eSIM. Starlink satellites will act as base stations in space, providing connection in mountains during natural disasters, power outages, and even in combat zones. Despite the ongoing war, Ukraine will be the first country in Europe to launch this technology, joining global pioneers like USA, Australia, Japan, Canada, and New Zealand. I urge you to join the fight for freedom and sovereignty, subscribe to our channel, and stay tuned to what is happening in the world, presented from Ukrainian perspective. Hope to see you very soon. Stay tuned. Goodbye.